1.
I think one that can't be ignored is over the top. It's, any consumer today can see the trend is moving in that direction with companies like Netflix, over your in-home broadband solution, or one of really probably hundreds or even thousands of other solutions that are out there. I think for us, we play a huge part in that. We've got a great CDN network where we host a lot of that content that consumers today pull across their broadband connection into their home. I see that just continuing to explode over the next several years.
Mine would be security. I think security is on everybody's mind these days. You hear about it in the news, you hear about all the threats, you hear about, all the compromises that take place. At Level 3 really takes security very, very seriously. And it's front of mind, and we have a great portfolio of security products to make sure that we can keep all of our customers' information safe.
2.
I think a lot's happened over the last 5 years. Even more has happened over the last 10 years. For me to try to predict what's going to happen in the next 5 years is tough. I can predict that we'll see technologies that are out there today and trends that are out there today. They'll continue to move forward over the top, huge. Every single customer, every single residential customer is pulling more and more content off the web across their local broadband network. Video is just a massive consumer of bandwidth across the internet. And I predict the same kinds of things will happen. For me to try to predict the next big thing, though, that's tough. A lot smarter people than me will have to figure that out. I just have to figure out how to make it work when they do.
3.
The only thing that I would add is I just think that the consumption of bandwidth continues to just grow in leaps and bounds. And I spoke earlier that we're deploying 100 gig networks now. And if it's not 5 years, it'll be soon thereafter. I think we'll be figuring out how to deploy and operate terabit networks. And I just think that I would have never thought that it would happen this fast. And the only other thing that I would add would be really around. It's all about making everything easier to everybody's fingertips, from a customer, from a consumer, and somehow I think all of us are going to have to figure out how to make that happen.
4.
I think today's employees, it's not a one-size-fits-all. There are some employees who are passionate about their personal development, the challenges they see in the workplace. There are other employees who measure themselves by, how much money they're able to make or how much career advancement they see. There are other employees who, prioritize work somewhere behind their family and somewhere behind their personal life. And I think what's important is understanding the total employee base that you have, not trying to shoehorn every single employee into one model. And we spend a lot of time and energy making sure that we provide an environment that caters to lots of different employees and what might be important to them.
5.
First of all, don't trust a squirrel when it comes to outside plant. The top 3, just going back over the years would be, probably the first one would have been, in the early 2000s. Out in Utah, we had major flooding out west, and we had some fiber that got compromised and actually had a cut. And we were trying to figure out, it was a major ravine that we couldn't get fiber across, and everything was tried. Even we had people trying to pull it across with a sea-doo, which was unheard of back in the day, and lucky people didn't get hurt. But at the end of the day, we used a line gun in order to get the fiber across, which was, a first for me, I must say. Even though we'd had a lot of different fiber cuts. The second one had to be, again in early 2000, was around the Northeast blackout. The whole Northeast United States went into a major blackout, And we had, at one point, we had upwards of 100 sites that all had to go to generator at one time and other sources of backup power. And, nobody knew what was going on around the country, and those people, we had to, get our employees engaged, and they had their own concerns at home and everything else. And some of our most critical customers and their circuits go through New York City, and that was one of the hardest hit. And we had to be able to get fuel to refuel the generators because it lasted in New York longer, and we actually had employees figuring out how to get 55-barrel drums of fuel at a time up high-story buildings, and so it was a really big deal. The last one was, it's probably a two-parter, and it's in Louisiana, and I'm gonna guess it was around 2003, and I was down in Louisiana doing a tour of facilities and meeting with personnel, and they took me outside of New Orleans to a site, and I couldn't believe my eyes, and I go, why did we build this on 20-foot stilts? And I just couldn't imagine why we spent all this extra money. Everything was on a platform, and I'm looking around and everything's just flat, and I'm going, why did we do this? And I'm looking at other providers that were in the area, and they just had normal looking sites. And right then I kind of was really upset with the engineer that had designed this and everything else, knowing that we had spent this extra money, and how did this ever get by me? And I remember meeting with the engineer, and he said, well, we built it really for the 100-year-old flood. And I go, I won't even be alive in 100 years, so why did we spend all that money? You take that forward, and it was only about 3 years after that, and Hurricane Katrina hit. And, it was devastation all to the whole Gulf Coast, and New Orleans was hit really hard. But we were the only provider that didn't go down, and a lot of it, leaving New Orleans, was because of this one site. Everybody else's site was completely washed away, and that site, it got all the way to the top, but it never compromised any of our buildings. We were one of the very only providers that still had service, the only one that had service, and I learned a valuable lesson then. Don't always question employees. Sometimes they make a lot better decisions than I would.